Right, so welcome to block 4. So by now you've gone through a number of different movement preps and you'll have probably started to gravitate towards the movements that you put, the movement prep exercise you prefer. So I'm going to add in some more today, and this is going to take you through the next block. But at this point, if there are things that you think, I don't like that, or it doesn't work as well for me, then obviously feel free to swap out what you've done previously with some of the new stuff. So due to biomechanics, shape of limbs, weight of body, all those things are going to affect your ability to be able to get into some of these positions. So if there's things that you're doing on this block and you prefer stuff that we did in block 1, block 2 or block 3, don't be frightened to swap these things out. The important thing is that you're doing movement prep, that you're spending 10 minutes before you train opening things up and activating certain muscles. So by now you understand my first priority as far as movement prep's concerned when I'm working with strong men, powerlifters and bodybuilders to an extent, is making sure you've got segmental movement in your spine. Now we're doing specific press, so that's our next block, or our first day of training our new block, and I'm going to spend some time working your thoracic spine because the shoulder blades sit on top of the thoracic spine, on top of the ribs. If your thoracic spine is stiff, it starts to affect the movement of the scapula and therefore the movement of the shoulders. So it makes you more prone to shoulder injuries. So the first movement we're going to do, so piece number 1, is a thoracic mobilisation using a 20 kilo plate to apply some external resistance and lower it onto your chest, and then we're going to use the foam roller to mobilise through the thoracic spine. So this is going to be hard to breathe with this because this fucker's like having a weight on my chest, literally. So pips up, starting off at T7, which if you imagine if you're wearing a bra, that's about the T7 region. And then what we're going to do with the weight on our chest, we're simply going to rock from right side to left side. Now you'll find as you do this, you'll get some little clicks and pops on your back, which is absolutely fine. That's the joints releasing. Once you've rocked from side to side in one segment, roll up a little bit, next segment, and then repeat the same process there. Now, hard to breathe on this one, so 2 minutes, spend a little bit of time rolling round, and then once you've got up to about the top of your scapula, which is in line with T2, don't go any higher, because you'll find that the natural curve of your back goes away from there, and we don't want any pressure up onto the sort of bottom of your thoracic, bottom of your cervical spine, top of your thoracic spine. So that's piece number 1. Right, so next piece, this is a posterior capsule mobilisation. So a lot of times people struggle with shoulder movements and shoulder pain because they're in this protracted, round-shouldered, gorilla-like position. And what tends to happen is the muscles at the front of the chest, these get short and tight, but the posterior part of your joint capsule, which sits underneath your rear delt, so if you're getting rear delt pain, it's probably not your rear delt, it's probably your posterior shoulder joints, that can often get tight as well. And then once your shoulder joint capsule is tight, it starts to limit your ability to be able to get into that external rotation movement, which is essential for creating stability and power overhead. So grabbing yourself a reasonably heavy weight, like on this one, you want something that's going to literally force your arm into the back of the shoulder joints. So we're going to take the head of the humerus, the top of your arm bone, right back, and in order to do that, we're going to again use some external loads. This is a loaded stretch. Right, so dumbbell over the top of your shoulder. So this is the shoulder that I'm mobilising. Head on the floor. Get yourself into what we call a crook lying position, which is lying on your back with your legs bent. Using the other hand, you're just going to give this arm that we're mobilising some support around the elbow joints. And then what we're going to try and do is let the weight of the dumbbell drive our humerus back into the floor. So you'll feel a stretch around the back of the shoulder. From there, we're going to push forwards into protraction, and we're going to externally rotate, watch the dumbbell turning, before we come back, and then we allow that shoulder to drop right back in. Now I'd like you to do 2 sets of 10 reps pushing forwards, externally rotating, allowing the shoulders to come back before you move on to the other side. So 2 sets of 10 on the left, 2 sets of 10 on the right, and you should find when you get back up, you feel like your shoulders are sitting further back in the socket, which again improves your ability to be able to get into those overhead positions. So that's piece number 2. So, piece number 3. I'm going to introduce to you my little friend, the lacrosse ball. Now, I don't think we've done much of this in the last 3 blocks, but these are really good for, do you know when you see massage therapists and they stick their elbow into those tight bits in your muscle and it's that exquisite pain that feels almost pleasurable? Well, this is your next best thing. Now, before you overhead press, there's some key areas that you want to try and make sure are loose and decompressed. So again, you can get into that proper overhead position, keeping the hands over the top of the shoulders. Now, this essentially is going to go onto the wall. I'm going to put my back onto the wall, so the lacrosse ball is sitting to one side of my scapula. So we're not on the spine, we're just onto the side of the inside of the scapula, the fleshy bit, the muscular bit, and you're going to spend some time rolling up and down there, finding the hot spots, the tight spots, camping out in those positions for a few seconds until it releases by pushing back onto it, getting tight, and then relaxing, and you'll find that when you roll back over those points, that tension and the pressure from the ball has eased a lot of those hot spots. So ball into position, feet away from the wall, and what we're going to do is we're going to spend a little bit of time just working through the middle to top part of your scapula. Now where the ball is here, so if you can just pan in there for us, Dan, that's on a muscle or an attachment point of a muscle called levator scapulae. Now levator scapulae lifts the scapula, elevates the scapula, and that's always a tight, gnarly bit in people at work, people that lift. So I'm going to spend some time there now. I want to get tight, so I'm going to tense my back muscles, push onto the ball, hold for about 5 seconds, and then I'm going to release. And as you release, you'll find the ball will sink deeper into those muscles. You're going to roll around a little bit more, find the next hot spot, which is just there, and then repeat the same process. Now there's no point rushing this. I'd spend a good minute working through the left side, a good minute working through the right side, and then retest your overhead position and see if that's made a difference. And if it does, if it allows you to get further back into that flexion position, therefore into a more overhead press position, that's a really useful adjunct to the stuff that we're doing already. So the final piece before you move into your specific warm-up for your strict press, your log press, is some work for your lat dorci muscle. So lat dorci attaches onto the back of your pelvis, comes all the way underneath your armpit and goes onto the front, onto the floor of something called the bicipital groove, which is where your bicep tendon runs. In a lot of people, it's very tight, and those people are protracted and round-shouldered. So when people say to you, when you've got that postural position, and they say, oh, you need to work your back more, and everybody starts doing more lat pull-downs, what that actually does is tighten that muscle up and make you even more like that. So what we're going to try and do here is lat dorci is going to limit your ability to be able to bring your arm up over the top of your head. So by loosening it off, by applying a longitudinal stretch, you're going to find that's again going to give us better range of movement to get into that optimum overhead position. So finding a wall, taking your hands about shoulder width apart, we're just going to drop down into the stretch. Now, rather than hold this for a long period of time, like you'll see a lot of people doing, because by now we know that stretching pre-lift reduces strength and reduces power, we're simply going to try and oscillate in and out of this position and making sure that each time we do it, we're dropping a little bit lower, taking ourselves further into the stretch. So that's piece number 4, that is your lat dorci stretch, and that is your movement prep for day 1, your specific press day, done.